The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions. How's it going?
I would love it if you would step right up and see the amazing nostalgia goggles.
What is it about being a carnival barker that makes you have to throw your voice into your nose? Like, you just have to.
Okay. I can actually answer that question. Do you just want to leave it at a rhetorical question, or do you actually want to know the answer?
After show. People got to pay for that. People got to pay for that kind of knowledge.
Yes. Okay. Here, I'm going to take a note. Carnival Barker. Yeah, it's interesting. The story is weird, but it is interesting. Yeah, we played RollerCoaster Tycoon 2 PC game, which did you happen to look at the year that this came out?
No.
2002. Just made it.
Ooh.
If we had played this in December, would have been
no good.
But we just made it. So I'm going to read directly from the Wikipedia for the summary of this game, because I just think this is so delightfully useless. But here's their summary of the game. RollerCoaster Tycoon 2 is a construction and management simulation game developed by Chris Sawyer. That's their whole description of what the game is. And then later in the gameplay section of the Wikipedia article, then they go on to explain that you manage an amusement park and you have to complete various goals to complete the larger scenarios, and you try to attract people with different kinds of rides and stuff. And then they go on and actually explain what the game is. But a construction and management simulation game developed by Chris Sawyer is, it's succinct. It's not wrong, but I feel like the game has a lot going on.
I feel like that you're right. It's not wrong. That would be like saying, Portal, a first-person shooter where you solve puzzles at the end of a gun.
Yeah, not wrong.
Yeah, it's like yes, but I feel like that something, as Data would say, there'd be a certain quality that's lost in that translation.
Yeah, and another thing that made me realize that as an adult, I now have a deeper appreciation for money coming in and money going out that I didn't have when I first played this game as a teenager. Is another thing that they include in the description later is the player must simultaneously balance the park's expenses and income. It's a business simulator. Wait, no, that's not actually, that would not necessarily be obvious to everybody. So, okay, yes, that's fair. Again, not wrong.
Yeah, he's like, hey, look, I'm running a business here, not a charity. Okay, and I will say that there were definitely a number of areas that having run a business where I was like, well, that's not how that would work. But
did you play the scenario where you just have unlimited money?
No, that's amazing. That's like playing on a real estate investor inheritance mode.
Yeah. It's like if you could activate the infinite money glitch in SimCity by just starting to play SimCity.
But no, there were definitely, we'll get into mechanics, but there were definitely some places where I went, whilst playing the game, I was like, you're telling me to get this critical thing that I absolutely have to have. It's dirt cheap, but this luxury thing that I don't need is way more expensive. Why would no park ever would have this thing.
Yeah. What do you mean you're making $3 profit on a $4 t-shirt? How are these t-shirts being made?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, what is your nostalgia experience for this game?
Dude, I played the mess out of this game. I played this game so much. And the thing about this game is I realized this game is one of the terrible twos where I played the sequel way more than I played the original, right? I played Masters of Orion, but I played Master of Orion 2 way more, right? I played Diablo, but I played Diablo 2 way more, right? I played Sonic, but I played Sonic 2 way more. There's just some games where the sequel becomes the definitive one for some people. This game actually has an interesting backstory because RollerCoaster Tycoon 2 is actually basically just RollerCoaster Tycoon 1. It's just that for some insane reason, he developed the entire game directly in assembly, which for anyone in our non-technical audience basically means it's like he wrote a book by hand chiseling it into stone, right? Like instead of writing it and then having a machine chisel it into stone and then selling the tablets, he was like, no, I'll just chisel it directly by smashing my face right into the rocks. And I mean, God bless him, because the game is surprisingly stable, like as a piece of software for someone who hand wrote it by themselves in assembly. RollerCoaster Tycoon 2 is basically the same thing as RollerCoaster Tycoon. It's written in more modern languages. It's been like stabilized. And I think that's when he started to get like partnerships with Six Flags and stuff, because it had taken off by then. But this game, in a lot of important mechanical ways, is actually not really dissimilar from the first game, but because that's where all the DLC was and that's where all the marketing and advertising was, it makes sense that for a lot of people, this game probably was the RollerCoaster Tycoon, right? It's not because it's better than the first one. It's because it's better than the first one in like imperceptible sort of behind the curtain ways, which I think is interesting, because like Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, totally different games. Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, totally different games, right? Like just massive improvements that are super obvious to the player. I didn't know any of that when I was a kid. I just really liked playing it.
So for me, this is actually closing up a blind spot for me, because I did not play this as a kid. But you could not get away from knowing about it. So I may have played it in passing, like once or twice, like at a friend's house or something like that. But if I remember correctly, my mom worked for IBM, and she had some powerful computers that were work computers, and I didn't really have. I was a console kid, I didn't really have too many computers that I could just play this type of game on. So no, I never actually played it, but I always knew they're like, oh yeah, you got to create the way I have been able to have conversations with people about this is because it's The Sims, so like it scratches the same itch, it's a complex what was it, a complex
it is a construction and management simulation game.
Yeah, that's basically this, right? It's
The Sims, it's Sim Ant, it's Sim Planet,
it's all that.
Any of those.
So when they were like, oh yeah, you've got to, like obviously you create roller coasters to kill people, and it's like, yeah, and you create death traps for your Sims.
Yes,
the
we've
first
all
thing you
taken
do
the
is,
ladder out of the pool or made an entire room of stoves.
Yeah, or for whatever reason done the thing where if you tell the Sim to put a plate down, they can't get around it. So they've now trapped them with a series of dirty dishes. They're just crying because they don't know what to do. It's like, God, they're 6. But anyways, so I never actually played it. So for me, it'll be interesting as we go through this, because I'm sure that you reached a depth of analysis on this that I wasn't able to scratch the surface of, because I had to learn all of it. Megan played the ever-loving mess out of this game, which was super helpful, because she was sitting right beside me as I played it and saying, you need to do thing A, don't do thing B. And I would have been awash on an island without that. So,
see, I love that, because this game was popular. I mean, it's actually still incredibly popular, but it was originally popular at a time in history when most people owned a computer, if they owned any computers. And so that is closer to the authentic experience, right? This is a single player game that is absolutely meant for one person to just sit there and like methodically go through the scenarios and try different things and use the track builder and whatever. But their friend, their cousin, their sibling or whatever is like over their shoulder being like, no, don't do that, do this, right? And that it becomes a 2-player game because you're like joint making decisions. So in a way, you by her having played the mess out of it, you got that like time machine experience.
Yeah, no, it definitely is a game that teaches collaboration.
Don't do it that way, stupid.
No, come on. But in the same way that, and I've said this a million times, I think that if you want to train somebody at a young age to be a manager, make them a DM in D&D. That's all you got to do, because every single skill you need is mimicked there, right? So I think that if you want to teach collaboration, you you have two people play a game like this, because it's like, well, this person's driving, so even if you know more about it, if you harangue them within an inch of their life, they'll probably just do the other thing to spite you. So that's probably not the way to go.
Yeah, which is a good lesson for any managers out there, that if you harass your employees enough, they will screw up just because they hate you.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. The same way that if you're mean enough to your players, they will try to derail your adventure. And when you say, I've got this amazing campaign built out in the city of Waterdeep with all of these Waterdavian characters, and then one of them says, let's go boating.
I set the building on fire and then go boating.
Got to get to the water. My clothes are hot.
Let's see. We got to show a little bit.
Yep.
If you like what we're doing and you enjoy the show, welcome. If it's your first time here, if not, hi, welcome back. You can give us feedback by reaching out on Twitter. We have a feedback form on the website. These things are listed in the show notes. We are both on the Twitters. I actually played a bunch of this on Twitch, which was fun because I'm really starting to enjoy that kind of like make every game a social game, like just hear other people's experiences and watch people, remorse and rejoice when things go, poorly or well. So you can watch me do that as well. Links also in the show notes. If you want to do something to help us out, the easiest thing is to give us a rating or a review on iTunes. And if you can't be bothered to use iTunes, which I wouldn't be able to blame you for because Apple Podcasts kind of sucks, you just tell somebody. Personal recommendations always carry a tremendous amount of weight. If you want to go crazy and actually give us money, we have a Patreon. And if you give us any level of support, then you get the after show that George was talking about way back there at the beginning. And apparently on today's after show, at least one of the subjects will be why carnival barkers sound that way.
The prophecy has been fulfilled.
And you can find out why for the low price of just looking it up on Google, or you can give us $1 and then find out, and other crap we talk about. If you go super crazy on Patreon and give us lots of money, then we'll actually shout you out on the show. So with that, we need to thank first our 8-bit classics, Yarno,
a rider of a chairlift,
Jason,
the driver of a racing car,
John,
the purveyor of a beautiful but a little haunted house,
and Kevin,
the king of the observation tower,
and our 16-bit heroes, Jacob,
screamer on an inverted coaster train,
and Michael,
driver of a spinning car,
and our full 3D supporter, David,
the miner on a mine train coaster.
Those were all pleasant. Like,
yeah.
Nobody really got shafted. Nobody really got rewarded. It was like, those were all nice and even.
So, okay, just full disclosure. Always want to be transparent. When you started saying shield, did you see my eyes go wide for a minute there?
Oh, you were doing that live. You were doing that in real time.
Yeah. The minute you said let's chill, I suddenly had a panic attack where I was, oh my God, I didn't do the names. Not even a little. So in the time that you said that, I had to think of what the structure I was going to use was. Google it, bring it up, and then start to pick it out by hand. So
no, I see. And that is the level of dedication we bring to every single episode of Nostalgia Goggles. Sometimes you prepare right before we start recording. Sometimes you prepare while we are recording.
Well, it's interesting because sometimes I'll come up with it days beforehand and like have it all prepared and ready to go. So it really is a lot of times there's some high rolls or some low rolls. Sometimes there are 20s and sometimes there are ones. And this is what a 1 looks like.
Well, this is how you know you're not a both artist, because you could be saying like, oh, well, you can't control when inspiration strikes. Like the muse just arrives when she pleases.
I just completely missed it. That's okay. But the nice thing was that when I was in the process of desperately trying to fumble through this, like I said, my eyes went wide as dish plates, right? Which was a great visual cue as to my mental state, which leads us to
visuals. This game does, I believe the correct term for this is isometric. I've seen people argue about that term, but I'm pretty sure this is the correct camera angle for isometric. The thing that limits you to is it is not a free roaming isometric camera. It is a fixed isometric camera. So you are either looking from, say, the north, or the east or the west or the south, right? It doesn't spin the map, right? Like you press rotate and it instantly rotates 90 degrees.
Correct.
So anytime you are looking at the world, you are seeing it in that view, which for me almost always was fine. And then when it wasn't, there was just nothing I could do about it. I was just completely like, I guess I'm going to remove this thing, or I'll try to use the like make scenery or make rides invisible features and like try to piece together where I'm trying to make this thing go. And there are some features like you can have height markers like on the land and on the pathways so that you can try and line up like a long pathway bridge or whatever. But it's when you run out of tools, sometimes you just have to guess and you're like, okay, I'll just try and build it. No, whoops, that wasn't what I meant to do. Destroy, and then try again. And that didn't age well, dude. Free roaming cameras are a mighty gift.
Well, and to your point too, is that when you zoom in stages too, right? Like it didn't seem, from what I could tell, that there was a spectrum of zoom. It was very digital, not analog.
Yeah, no, it ain't smooth.
Yeah. So yeah, and definitely there was a time, literally while Megan and I were playing, where I built a ride and could not for the life of me get, because I rotated the camera, but there were still trees in the way. So I was like, fine, I'll demolish these trees. But they were like, well, you don't own this property. So even though you've rotated the camera, the trees are still in the way. And I just said, this ride was $500. I'm going to scrap it and build it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Because I did the quick crunch in my head and I was like, the time I am spending screwing around with this is eclipsing the amount of money that I have spent on the ride. I am just going to build this ride somewhere else. And especially because, and this is more of a mechanics note, I couldn't really get a feel for it. Is there an optimum location for certain things? I'm sure that there is, but since I don't know what that is, all of this is the same. So not only can the view be bad, it can be game-breakingly bad because literally you can't always play the game. I will say that visuals for the sake of visuals, just to kind of get this out, the game's very, very colorful. It's very very
cartoony.
Yeah, it's very bright, vibrant colors. And this isn't, because this was a computer game, this is not a situation where we can say, well, the NES had a limited color palette or SNES had a limited color palette. It's like, man, I don't know how many colors they had, but I'm assuming all that they had all of the colors.
But by this time in history, yes. This is in terms of like, oh, is the color palette limited? No.
Yeah.
That not here.
They have all of the colors you've seen and some new ones too that you have not. You got to get that fourth set of cones or rods, cones.
Yeah, I don't know, but we'll tell you in the after show. We won't. We're not going to talk about rods and cones in the after show.
No, they didn't need to know. But not only that, the thing that really kind of floored me for visuals for the sake of visuals is the sheer volume of visual assets there are in this game. There is so much stuff. Not only are there a billion different roller coasters, all of which can be customized. So that literally means there's now an infinite number of roller coasters. But just the lovingly handcrafted animations they did for every little individual human. So not only do not every single guest, I assume, but most of the guests look different. So they're not all just, clones pulled out of their clone sleeve, right?
It's a lot of, they do it with colors, mostly of their clothes and like their facial expressions. I think they're the same character model, but you get enough variety that even though they are the same kind of vague character model, you're seeing them small enough and with the bright colors being different enough that it makes them all feel unique.
Right. And not only that, the different people like the entertainer and the security guard and they're all very different. They have animations for them being sick. They have animations for them vomiting. They have animations for vomit. They have, because that's a key part of this game. But they also have like them carrying a balloon. If you open up a balloon stand, they have them eating. They have all of these different things that they do. But to me, the thing that really floored me as far as the lovingly handcrafted animations for this is that when you pick one of them up to put them somewhere else, they have an animation of you like grabbing them by their scruff and then kind of
and
like,
they're dangling kind of lifelessly.
Yeah. I was like, that to me was what clinched it for visuals, for the sake of visuals, and really kind of making you feel that you were, I don't know, immersed in the park. Because it's a weird feeling because you're not actually managing. Because then if you wanted someone to go somewhere, there'd be an animation of you calling them and saying, "Hey, go clean up this vomit." But yeah, it was just I don't know. It was very well done.
And to your point, everyone who lives in the universe, they do stuff like that, right? So if you happen to be looking at one of your engineers when a ride breaks down and they're the one who's responding, they do take out a little radio and they kind of nod their head and they have a little conversation and then they walk over to the ride and then they fix the ride. And I think what is happening here is that you can only zoom in so much, right? Like the level of zoom is not close. Like you are always at, I mean, what would you say? Like several hundred meters away? Like you're high in the sky.
Yeah, you are definitely at the grandpa looking at out the window with cataracts. Like everyone, they all look like ants.
Yes,
Grandpa, we haven't taken off yet.
Yes. Terrifyingly approaching for some of us. Yes. So you never see like, oh, well, this is Jim and Jim has a funny little mole right there on his cheek. And we all used to tease him and call him Marilyn. Ha ha ha. Right. Like it's not that, it's all the uniqueness, and life is done through animation, right? Through little body motions, through big body motions, right? Through even little animations in the world, like the way the merry-go-round, accelerates and decelerates, the way the Ferris wheel accelerates and decelerates. So like, when a ride is starting or stopping. On the roller coasters, you can see the like shoulder harness go up and down, or like the lap bars go up and down. And I mean, you're hundreds of feet, if not hundreds of meters in the air. So the fact that just that little shift in color makes your brain go, oh, the lap belt just went down. It's like, no, one brown pixel moved to the neighboring pixel, but it's just crafted in such a way, and the animation is done so, I want to say like expertly, like it's done so thoughtfully that your brain just happily goes along with all of the little tricks. Now, for me, the animation that cinched it, because, I think this game looks pretty much exactly the way I remember it, which is kind of cool because the metals of the tracks are very shiny and the texture of the environment is not super realistic, but it's very, sim game. Like it looks nice. The animation that cinched it for me, and just like, these are good visuals. When you win a scenario, everybody stops what they're doing and applauds for you. So they all turn and look toward the camera, which they should not be able to do because now they're looking like down the middle of a 90-degree rotation. And if they're carrying balloons, they drop their balloons. So all the balloons that are in the park like fly up into the sky at once, and everybody like claps for you. And it's just like, I don't care that this doesn't make any sense and that they're completely breaking the fourth wall. Like, this is friggin' delightful. This is so charming. Like, it made me want to finish more scenarios just to like get the little round of applause.
Feel this. This is God.
Yes. I'm God.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? There's probably a joke in there about like, of course, the animation you loved the most was, 500 or 1,000 people, but you get it.
Thousands, George. My parks were masterful. Thousands of people were applauding me.
I mean, to be fair, if I was to take that shot, I would then have to admit that I did not beat a scenario. So,
you were just jumping around.
Yeah, I mean, I one of the things that I do, as you know, and we've probably discussed on this, is that the minute that a thing stops bringing me joy, it is out of my life. So, but again, I'm doing this to review the game. But I can tell you that when it says you have to have 1,500 people in your park at once by October of year 2, and it's August of year 2, and I've got 500 people in the park, I'm not finishing that scenario. Like, it's a lost friggin' cause. So I just dumped out a new one.
I'm going to say this really quickly right here, and then maybe this will be another thing we talk about in the after show. The community around RollerCoaster Tycoon is super active. And there's a mod for this game called Open RollerCoaster Tycoon 2 because it's an open source re-implementation of the game. And it's just quality of life improvements as far as the eye can see.
Nice.
And one of I didn't use any of them because that would have tainted my experience. But one of the things that I saw on their website is finish a scenario as soon as the conditions are met.
Mm-hmm.
So you can say, I'm really good at this game. I will finish the scenario in the first 6 months. I don't need 3 years. And I'm not going to wait 3 years for the scenario to be over. So you can just say, okay, I met the condition. I'm done. Right. And so like, there's a bunch of little things in there that I think are super interesting and worth talking about later if we get around to it. But I'm 100% with you. Like, multiple scenarios that I finished is because I met the conditions and then I went and made a sandwich and just had to leave the game running because there's no way to say like, okay, I did it.
Yeah. And on top of that, like, because it drives Megan insane because she's a completionist, right? You know, so I've literally put down a 1,000-page book with 10 pages left because I was like, I get it.
You friggin' monster.
And she's like, don't you want to know how it ends? I'm like, I know how it ends. These things happen. She's like, but yeah, but what about the last couple of pages? I'm like, did anything earth shattering happen? She's like, no. I'm like, no, I'm not going to read it. I don't really care. So anyways, I say, and I'll do the same thing with, this is slightly tangential, but I'll do the same thing with Civilization 6, where it's like when I have clearly, dominated the world, I'm like, all right, I don't want to go conquer those last 5 cities. I'll just start a new game.
So that's an important reference point, right? Because you have reported on this show and in our friendship that you love Civilization 6. So it's not that RollerCoaster Tycoon 2 is driving you away from finishing scenarios. That is a you, the player thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, no, I would just be like, yeah, I did it. I won. And then move on with my life. So one of the other things that the game does well is kind of letting you know the ebbs and flows of the park just, again, by the visuals, right? So there is a ton of depth here that is arguably well telegraphed, but one of the things that was happening, and this is apparently a glitch in the game, which is that the big space blob ride or something, it will occasionally just not let people on it. You build it, you turn the thing on. I don't know why. You can probably enlighten me to why you would put something in test. I could never really figure it out. I was
like if you design your own coaster.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I was like, yeah, I tested it by putting paying patrons on it, and if they die, they die.
Yeah, if there's any reason to test the prefab stuff, I don't know what it is. I think it's just there for authenticity.
Yeah, but yeah, I was very what's his name in Rocky IV? Like, if they die, they die. Anyways, but yeah, so the way that I became aware of this problem, though, was because I was like, man, the blob ride is just doing banging business. Look at that queue line. Queue line's going all the way out. And Megan was like, just check how many people are on it. It's 0. 0 people are on it. 0 people have ever ridden it. And I was like, well, what is going on? And then we went through I had to pause the game and then turn it on and off. And then it alleviated that glitch with that particular ride. And then just everybody filed on. But I say all of that to say that the visual cue of there is something outside of 3 standard deviations from the mean was very, very clear, so they do a good job with that.
Well, and that the clear visual of people standing in line is contextually useful, right? Because you just slam a ride down and you see this gigantic queue, and your first thought is like, oh, wow, it's doing great. And Megan's first thought was, no.
Not that good.
So something's happening there, right? But if you had just slammed down an amazing roller coaster, and it's the first amazing roller coaster in your park, and that queue line backs all the way up, and you can see, because the roller coasters are external rides, you can literally see people riding them, then you'd be like, oh, wow, I should be charging more money for that ride, right? Because now you know that the ride is functioning, but you also know that people are obviously willing to line up in this enormous queue for whatever it is you're currently charging. And a lot of the scenarios, I was a Disney kid, right? I didn't go to friggin' carnivals where you paid for each individual ride. So all the scenarios where you can't charge people to get into the park, you have to charge per ride, feel like unnatural to me. But I use that queue information, right? Because it's a super clear visual. I built this giant mile-long queue and people are flooding it. That means I should be charging more money because the market will sustain it.
Supply and demand. So speaking of that, in no way. So the thing with the HUD, I am really sure that the nice thing is that I am confident that over time you can internalize what all of those things mean.
The little buttons at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of the gate, though, not a lot of them make a whole ton of sense. And on top of that, I think it took me some time, but the amount of time you have to hover your cursor over it to get it to tell you what it is too long. And the reason why I know this is because my original note was hovering your mouse over it doesn't do anything. And then after I hovered over it, and I think I got distracted and looked away and then looked back, it was then telling me, oh, this is for this thing. And I was like, okay, so it will tell you eventually, but not in what we would consider to be a nominal amount of time these days.
So this is a problem that I noticed with this game because I had this same problem with when we played Masters of Orion 2, which was hover, what it's called a tooltip. Those little hover states were not a common UI design pattern at this time in history. That was just becoming a thing. The expectation was either you knew what the thing did because there's like words or a super clear icon or whatever, or you just clicked on it and then you learned what it did, right? And not everyone is always willing to do that. Sometimes operations are destructive and you don't want people to experiment by clicking on them. So like, that's why we've, changed that, and hover states are now like sometimes even hyper aggressive. Sometimes you'll be on a website and you'll just, as you're moving your cursor across the screen, things are freaking out because hover states are
bam.
Right. So I say all that to say, I also left my cursor over a couple buttons and I was like, where is the hub? No, wait. Think about when in history this game was made. This is the exact same problem you had with Masters of Orion, and that game was even older, right? So like, I actually did just start clicking on things because they do a good job of at least making things that are clickable, like in the UI, look like buttons. And everything in the park you can click on. People, trees, rides, right? So like anything in the world is clickable. But then in the HUD, they do a pretty good job of like the little outline with a drop shadow. And it's like, this is a button. If you depress it, it will behave like a button behaves. So I did have to put myself into that proceed less cautiously mindset. But that is a visual thing that aged poorly, and it's unlikely they could have foreseen that because that's like a design pattern thing. But dude, I'm 100% with you. I was like, tell me what this button does. And the game is sitting there like, click on the button, stupid.
Yeah, just try it. Try stuff. And it's like, no, but what if this is the destroy the park button? So that like I said was not wildly intuitive. The other kind of, and so to your point, right, is that once you start clicking and start exploring, it becomes more obvious. But part of the issue is, and this is one of my big notes from mechanics, so I don't want to get into it now, is that because of the sheer breadth of choices that you are allowed to make, you can think you've reached a dead end when you have not. Like, you can be going down the right avenue to do a thing, and it's like, I mean, this isn't working, so I must not even be in the right menu for it, So, which was something that I ran into a couple of times. Now, again, it was very helpful to have, Megan by my side saying, no, now you need to do thing A, try. And she would, all I needed was, I know it's a thing you can do. I know that was the information. So I was like, there is a treasure chest somewhere in this dungeon, and I haven't found a treasure chest yet. Therefore, I must continue exploring, as opposed to, and then, oh, look, there's a secret, trap door here or whatever. Right. As opposed to just, no, I explored the dungeon. It's empty, The other kind of note that I had for visuals, as far as the UI goes, is, and this is just, it's an interesting product of its time. I don't think it's either good or bad, is that this game's user interface is Windows. It's
Yeah.
not custom. It's just Windows, man. You click a button, it opens the window, and then you can move it around. The thing that I think is interesting though is that clicking the top level HUD button again does not close the window, which is something that we're used to now, which took me a little bit to internalize, right? So I'd click the button and say, oh no, that's not the window I wanted. So I then click the next button over, and then that window would stay open. And then it wasn't long before Megan literally said, can you clean up these windows? There's too much.
Dude, you hire a bunch of handymen all at once. All
Yep.
those
And all of
windows
a
are
sudden
everywhere.
they're just like walking around, and it's definitely I am not a hoarder, but I can now empathize with that a little bit more, because you don't even see the problem until all of a sudden you've got 15 windows open and you're viewing the park through like this small portion of your screen, and you're like, I can't see anything. What's going on here? So it was just, like I said, so you have to hit the little X's on each one and close them. So it's all very manageable. But again, like, the fact that it doesn't automatically close out some of those windows, which we would just expect nowadays, was just fascinating era of the time thing.
Yeah, and that kind of game UI through boxes over the world is that's every sim game, right? Every sim game is your interface to the world is boxes that tell you things about the world or let you make decisions about the world. You don't go down and bend the steel of the track with your bare hands, right? It's just not that kind of thing. But that means like window management is now an important feature of the game, because you have to manage all these goddamn windows. And I do, I empathize with your situation, because that is definitely a thing that, because I played this a fair amount, I did re-internalize that behavior. But I think there's a pretty heavy emphasis there on the re-internalization, right? I used to know that this is a thing I had to do, and so I was able to return to it, right? I was able to get back on the bike. But every time I was like, oh, I'm gonna hire my initial handymen and security guards and entertainers for the park, I would hire all of them and now just be drowning in windows and then have to go and close them all. And it's like, okay, this is visually, how would this possibly be useful? Like what could possibly be useful about having all of this information on the screen at the same time?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You have anything else for visuals?
I do have two things. The HUD, as far as like the information, so buttons along the top, right? And then informational HUD along the bottom. There's a little Doom guy face, how much ammo and armor you have. No, wait, that was something else.
Yep. But that's why I used the chain gun to decrease the number of people I had in the park.
Right. It's getting a little crowded in here. The HUD has three parts. On the left, there's park information. On the right, there's world information, which is basically the date and the weather. And then the whole middle section is like pop-up style notifications. So like this ride just broke down, you just won an award, whatever, like pops up down there. I realized after playing through several different scenarios, because I got through quite a few. I think I played like 6 or 7 entire scenarios. Because I would get to the point where I won and then go do something else, right? So I was able to keep it time boxed a little bit more reasonably for my schedule. But what I realized is the information in the HUD, that's the information you actually need. Because as I'm sure we will talk about more in mechanics, there's a lot of data, a lot of windows with a lot of data. But if you're just a kid trying to beat the scenario, here are the things that are in the HUD. What is the current date, which matters if it's a time box scenario, which a lot of them are. How much money do I have and which way is that going? How many people are in the park and which way is that going? And what is the rating of the park and which way is that going? And basically every single scenario that I looked at has those 4 things as the key pieces of information you need to possibly win that scenario, right? It's either all or at least some of them. And so I thought that was very thoughtful to say, we're going to take up this, because this game's from 2002, right? Monitors were not the giant endless oceans of pixels that they are today. So
mine were.
Well, your mom worked for IBM. So you had, this precious real estate at the bottom of the screen, and they were like, okay, we're going to make it so that if you're just trying to have fun and beat the scenario, the most critical information, essentially your health and ammo, is right in front of you all the time. And I was like, that's good, because they could have shoved a lot more crap onto the screen that's not closable, where there is no little X on that window, and they didn't. And I appreciate that, because sometimes you just want to look at the damn park. You got all these rides and all these people and stuff, and like, you want to be able to see it. But I do also appreciate that you can't accidentally close out those critical windows and then forget to reopen them, and then something goes catastrophically wrong and you're sad. So like, yes, please use those few pixels in the corner to make sure I always know, am I going bankrupt? Are people flooding out of here because it's like a health hazard? Like, what is the current trajectory of my park?
Yes, no, I agree with that completely. And I will say that, it's more of a mechanical note, but the speed at which you are making money, is the fact that you are making money is helpful. The rate at which you're making money isn't displayed as quickly or easily, and I think that would be helpful for a novice, because the first scenario that I did, so the problem with any game like this is that once you fall behind, the chances of you catching up is low, right? It's the same thing in a civilization game, which is that once it's a positive feedback loop. Once you start to win, you are very likely to continue to win, and once you start to lose, you are very likely to continue to lose. I say all that to say, with the first scenario that I had, is I was like, yeah, man, everybody likes my park, got a good rating, making some money, it's going pretty good. I've got like a third of the number of people in this park that I need. And I've got like 6 months left. Okay. Well, I guess I got to build more attractions and more stuff, right? And it just was not enough time to close the gap. So I think that some information on like, hey, you're tracking, where you are to your goal would have been nice to have. But that being said, is at least knowing that I'm not hemorrhaging money at the seams was good information to have.
Yeah, that's true, because the current state of things and their trajectory. You don't have that relative to any other objective. That's a good point.
Yeah, but you said you had another visual note?
Yeah, dude, this is just a weird one. When I was a kid, I remember caring so much about how the park looked, like how the rides were organized, and like how the park was themed. Like, are there trees? Do I have lanterns? Right? Because again, Disney kid, like, theme parks to me are Disney World, not Six Flags, right? And RollerCoaster Tycoon is Six Flags. I mean, they literally had a partnership with Six Flags. Disney puts a lot of emphasis on how it looks, how it feels, the whole immersive thing, right? I didn't care about any of that this time. Every single time so like, you can research, different rides and stuff. And one of the areas of research is scenery and theming. And I would literally go in and just turn that off, because I was like, don't spend a minute of your time or $1 of my money on that, because I don't care. I don't care. And as far as I can tell, the people don't care either. And so I just ended up, all of my parks just look like these bizarre, here's a million theme park rides with these insane zigzagging queues so that we can cram as many people into them as possible. It's like the theme park a robot would go to, like everything just in neat rows with zigzag queues, like completely unappealing to look at. I mean, orderly, but like not pleasant.
What you did was you built the mechanism of theme parks, right? Like you built the truly lawful neutral, because what you did was you built your goal wasn't to produce a theme park. Your goal was to produce money, and you did that. Well,
and I closely monitored customer satisfaction and everything. Everybody was fine,
because otherwise you wouldn't get the money.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
yeah, no, I was not walking through the park and saying like, do you think it'd be good if I put flowers here? How about a tree over there? They didn't ask for trees. I didn't give them any. Right,
exactly. Because that's the thing, right? Is that you got into the roller coaster business to make money. You're no longer the wide-eyed child who got into the theme park business because they wanted to create a place where children could live out their dreams. You got into it because if you didn't create the exact themes, the exact things that they wanted, then you didn't get your quarterly bonus. So like that's
yeah, and that is, I mean, honestly, like, that is a little sad for me because I want to be Walt Disney, but I'm busy and I'm old and tired, and I only had the time to be John Six Flags.
Well, I think you wanted to be Walt Disney in his 30s. Instead, you were Walt Disney in his 70s.
I think that would be 50s.
I don't know. I don't know. You have now eclipsed the amount I know about Walt Disney.
He died young and tragically.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, audio or
no, that was super happy transitional note.
Yep. So for the audio, one is the songs are all, from what I could tell, themed, right? So all the music is it's hard to say like, oh man, it had a banging soundtrack, because most of the music was carnival music, because it's for carnival rides.
Well, or it's themed carnival. So it's like fantasy carnival music, medieval carnival music, space carnival music.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that any of these songs are bangers, but I will say that they did a great job in, putting you in again, like creating that experience, right? The thing that they did that I thought was the most awesome and the most appropriate is that the music and sound effects that you hear come from rides, which means that if you move your view away from that ride, it goes away. So basically it's like when you're walking near the roller coaster, you can hear the roller coaster. And then when you walk away from it, you don't, because otherwise it would be this cacophony of noise. And the most important thing is you can turn it all off.
Yep.
In
fact,
each ride,
most of the rides start without music and you have to turn it on.
Right. So yes, which I think is hypercritical, because if you get tired of hearing somebody scream wildly because of the haunted house that you built, you don't have to hear it. And it's very easy to turn it off. So it's not, and because it's a la carte, it's not like, oh, well, I don't like listening to the haunted house ride, so I don't get to listen to any of it. It's like, nope, you can turn it off item by item. So I thought all of that was very well done and very appropriate.
I actually I had one park there I had to build like it's a really stupid scenario. It's like build like 10 roller coasters, 10 different types of roller coasters, but you have infinite money and it's not time boxed. It's one of the really weird scenarios. But I just gave them all the same music. So anywhere I went in the park, I was listening to this one consistent piece of music, which thematically made no goddamn sense, but it just created like this nice little experience. So if you as the player want to even push it that far where you're like, I think this is pleasant, because they're all Muzak, these aren't songs, they're tunes. So like if there's one tune in there, because most of the rides I think all have the same options available, maybe with like a few exceptions. So you just put same song on every single ride, and then you don't end up with that like, oh god, there's a million different things playing, I'm gonna kill myself. Like it's at least now it feels more like the game has background music as opposed to you're hearing the sound coming from that ride. So that even that kind of customization is an option.
Yeah, no. So I felt that, like I said, like that was kind of the all of the, I can't think of any sound effects that were done to make you aware of a thing mechanically within the game. Most of it was all ambiance.
That's the noise that the little scroller notification on the bottom makes. It sounds like an old fashioned, like a telegram or like that like radio broadcast thing. It's like,
yeah, you're right. And that was very helpful, because whenever that hit, I would then look to the bottom to see.
But that may be the only sound effect that's like, hey, move your eyes to this part of the screen, right? Nothing else requires like a snap. It's not a bullet hell game, right? It's not, your monsters aren't descending on you. You never have to like snap your attention to the threat. So it's nice that the only thing that makes an alarm noise is an alarm.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think, because one of the games I've been playing recently that I think does a great job with audio cues is Hades, because it there's a lot of things that are kind of going on that not under the hood, because they make you aware of them, but you can get a boon from chaos that expires at a certain time, and that has its own sound effect. When certain things impact or stop impacting. They all have their own little sound effects. So you can eventually kind of internalize when you hear a noise and you don't need to go check what's going on. But this one, I think it's appropriate that the only noise that it has is look at this thing, because that's all it needs, right? It doesn't need 15 different noises for, oh, well, this is what the sound it makes when a ride breaks down. And this is the sound it makes when this other thing happens. And you have to then internalize all that stuff. It's like, this is the sound that then makes you read the thing that says what's going on, right?
Yeah, you're being paged. You get a text message.
Yeah, exactly. The ride's broken down and you're like, oh, well, my mechanic will take care of that. And you just quickly look at your mechanic and you're like, yep, they're taking care of it. Or, oh no, I need to go hire a mechanic, which I will say is probably one of the most unrealistic things about this game, is that there's an infinite, infinite source of trained labor that can start immediately,
I wonder, is this the first video game review ever to like grind its teeth at like, oh, it'd be nice if hiring people was that easy. Like with all of the fantastical nonsense video games we've played, like that's where you're like, come on, like There's you could get a skilled worker in the park that quickly.
Yeah, come on. I mean, like what you're telling me is that all I had to do was basically jump on Indeed and then click and then find a person's resume and like click on it. And then all of a sudden they are hovering in front of the problem by the scruff of their neck, dangling. And I can just drop them. Yeah, man. I mean, that's an employer. That's the dream, right?
I love the idea of like, I know you said you didn't play this game as a kid, but like, 17-year-old George is like, I can build the roller coaster of my dreams. And mid-30s George is like, I can hire people. And like, somehow you find those equally satisfying.
Yes. Yeah. No. It's because they're both equally unrealistic. A 17-year-old building a custom roller coaster and a 36-year-old being able to hire somebody in that time frame. Yeah, that's about the same. Anyways, they were talking about audio before I went.
Yeah, I think we were.
Go for it. I'm out.
Oh yeah. Well, oh geez, that's short even for you.
Yep.
So here is a super negative thing about the audio, and this is, I think this is happening for technical limitations at the time, and there's just nothing that playing this on modern hardware can do because the way the game was designed. That's my suspicion, which is, you mentioned when a ride is off screen that you cannot hear the noise that ride makes. Mm-hmm. Some rides are large, like roller coasters. And they can be partially on screen and partially off screen, which means if you have a thrilling roller coaster that has people screaming on it, sometimes their screams go, because they're going on and off the part of the screen that you can see the track for. And so their screams, they don't fade in and fade out. They instantly are at full volume and then they're instantly silenced. So it's just, I mean, you can just scroll the screen a little bit to one side, or you can zoom out a little bit, because they do actually duck the volume as you zoom in and out. So when you zoom way far out, everything sounds like it's a million miles away. You zoom all the way in, you get the maximum volume. But the borders of the screen, those are impervious sound defenses through which no, it's like the vacuum of space. Like no audio can travel over it. And so
it was like 1,000 voices all cried out at once and were immediately silenced.
Yes. And then they came back and then they got off the ride and we're very happy. This
it was like a mixture of having a Death Star and the Dragon Balls.
Yes. I mean, the Death Star is round, so obviously.
Yeah.
This feels like an incredibly nitpicky thing, but this is the kind of thing that a modern game would never do. A modern game would never have audio instantly start or instantly stop, right? There's always like a fade in, fade out so that you don't get jarring, unless it's meant to be a jarring sound, which this is not, right? So,
yeah.
It's just, and it sounds so comically unnatural, right? Like to just have these people like enjoying the ride and then all of their sound is instantly gone. Again, like it's super nitpicky, but because once you have a fairly sophisticated park, there's a lot of this going on. There's a lot of people on roller coasters in all directions, and it's hard to have all of them completely under screen all the time. So the larger your park is and the longer you play in some of the scenarios that just go on for ages, you can really run into this more than you would think.
Yeah, I can imagine. And again, to your point, is that it's not that the game would never do that. It's that somebody would say, this is jarring. We should do something about it, right? Or this is jarring, and that's what we wanted to have happen, you know?
Yeah.
But definitely it is interesting that, and I'm wondering kind of what it's a function of. If it's a function of the fact that nobody builds games in their basement anymore. Nobody self-codes and whatever the heck you were talking about before. That just doesn't, whatever the ASCII or
assembly.
Yeah. Nobody assembles things like that anymore. So you've got a team of people looking at it, right? So, you've got somebody who said, hey, I just made this new thing. And then somebody fresh can sit down and experience it. I know that there's a extra credits where James was called in to help with a game. And after like 15 minutes, he's like, I'm sorry, how do you open the inventory? And the team said, triple click the player. And he was like, what?
Why would I have known that?
Right. And the thing was, they'd just done it for so long that they were like, oh, it's intuitive. So I get the feeling that after you've just been playing the game for hours and hours and hours and hours, this type of thing drones out. So a team of people would be likely to catch it, but an individual or
even in the modern day, you would do like a beta on Steam, like Steam Early Access or whatever, right? So players would be like, oh, wow, the shrieking is incredibly jarring. I would really love it if there was not quite so much shrieking that instantly started and instantly stopped. And it's just weird, right? Because one of the many people playing the game for free before they decide to pay you for it would be like, I don't like this, and I'm going to complain about this free thing. But then the designer, Chris Sawyer, would be like, thank you. Right.
Yeah,
right. It's
I appreciate that.
Like, oh, what an ungrateful jerk complaining about something so stupid, like I am doing right now. But yeah, at this time in history, like it was way closer to the, geek in a California garage style of, the lone designer. So I guess I'll give him a pass. I don't give him a pass.
Do you have anything else pressing for audio?
Nah, I mean, dude, this is a sim game. All of the meat is in mechanics. A lot of games, the meat is in mechanics, but for sim games, holy moly.
So here's the big note that I kind of stitches a lot of my smaller stuff together, which is because I spent a lot of time kind of thinking about it, which is I hit a couple of frustration points with this game, which I knew was going to happen. It can always happen with any game. It can especially happen with older games, and it can super especially happen with older games that have this level of depth. But what I think that this game does is it allows you to make wrong choices, not suboptimal choices, wrong choices, which is something which is something that I think is like I said. So to compare it to Civilization 6, right? Is that fair? No,
yeah, totally fair.
Yep. So is that there is a whole bunch of different ways you can play this game. You can go for science victory, you can go for military, and or you could go for all the different types of victories. And if you're going for a certain victory type, then building certain things does not make any sense, right? Like I can count on probably one hand the number of religious districts I've ever built. All of my communities are hyper scientific and entertainment based. Like they are just made of entertainment and science, because that's the way I want to live my life, and that's the way I want my cultures to live their lives, right? But that being said is that, like, that's fine for the types of victories I went for. But if I wanted to go for religious victory and then all of a sudden started building all these other types of things, that would be a suboptimal way to play. The game would let me do it, though, right? The game won't let me build a thing that produces science in a place where it is incapable of producing science. It won't let me do that. Mm-hmm. It'll let me build it. Like there's a place there where it's like, if you build it here, it'll give you +6 science. And if you here, it'll give you no bonus of science. So one of those is an obvious choice, right? And it'll let me do both, but it won't let me build it in a place where it won't function, right? That's not true of this game. This game will absolutely let you make choices that are wrong. So like I tried to build and part of the issue is that there's not really, from what I could tell, an undo button. So
no, you gotta delete it, and you get a fair amount of your money back. You get like 85 or 90% of your money back, but it's not 100.
It's not 100%. So that means that if you just went all in on a roller coaster, right, then that $10,000, right, that you just spent on that, and you're like, well, I don't, I have now built this in a place where I cannot reasonably build a queue line to it. I'm screwed. Or I built it and then I didn't build a queue line to it. I built a normal walkway to it, right? That is something the game will absolutely let you do. And that roller coaster will not function, So again, why is that an option? Like, why does the game let me do that? And I think that that's one of the things that I saw in this older game, which is that newer games won't let you of this type won't let you make wrong decisions. They will let you make suboptimal ones, but not wrong ones.
So here is where this gets a little complicated, because I think on the face of it, you're right. You can do things where it's like, oh, I built this right up against the edge of my property. It is now impossible for me to build a queue line here because I don't own any of the land. Like, the entrance is now pointing at the fence, right? Like, right. Why did the game allow me to do that? But here's where I think it does get reasonably complicated, which is the game facilitates buying more land. So you can actually expand the map. You can, for a huge amount of money and with very terrible controls, actually raise and lower the land and raise and lower the water. And like, you can friggin' terraform, like you could turn the desert into, a tropical paradise if you want to. So the things that are actually impossible choices where it's like, oh, I built this ride here and now I cannot possibly get a line to it. It's like, no, you can. You just have to spend thousands of dollars to buy additional land outside of the park. And now you have to dig a tunnel underground to have the queue line go underneath this other ride that's already here because you don't want to go over it. You're going to go under it. So it's like, there are situations where you are stuck, right? And you absolutely, you bought all the land, so you can't possibly buy more land, or you don't have enough money to dig a tunnel or do whatever crazy thing you would need to do to make it work. And this is where I think your problem is actually made worse, which is you may be in a situation that is not impossible, but it seems impossible because you don't know, oh, I can buy a little more land and then I can dig a tunnel under this other two rides and then I can make the tunnel have the queue line in it and do all these complicated, crazy things. And so the game lets you do something and then looks at you and goes, I don't know, figure it out. Like, it might be impossible, but it's probably not. But the solution is so awkward that it seems impossible, which is worse because then you're like, oh, I can't do it. And then Megan would lean over and be like, sure you can. And you're like, what? How would I have known to do these crazy hoops and stuff I have to jump through, right? So it's like, it's the problem compounds itself where because there's so much depth, it's unlikely you'll find yourself in an impossible situation. But there's a lot of situations that aren't impossible that look impossible, which is also not the kind of feedback you want the game to give you.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, and to your point, right, is that there are a lot of times, where so to me, the one thing that I can point to about being a wrong decision is it will let you build a path to the entrance instead of a queue line.
Yes. And there's no magic. You can't right click it and say turn this into a queue line as far as I know. So like that, you're totally right on.
Right. So yeah. So like that. So but then once that dam's broken, right, where you're like, well, they'll let me do this. Maybe they'll let me do other things, like, so once that trust is broken, it's kind of difficult to come back from. And then and on top of that is I think that, so for instance, the terraforming, right? Like that is something that absolutely you may want to do. And I'm glad that exists in the game. But when you're building a roller coaster, the main thing you want is to create a functional roller coaster, right? So there, and again, like this is something where it's a little nitpicky, but it's something that didn't age well, and modern games would never do, which is that it doesn't facilitate that. Is in order for you to you're playing Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, and you want to build a roller coaster, you may just be able to do it, but if you pick the wrong prefabbed one, right, you may have to have a mastery of several completely unrelated mechanics in order to get that roller coaster online. And I know, because like I said, what pinged me about this was the first roller coaster I tried to build. So I'd done my due diligence. I built the dumb, Ferris wheel, and I built the dumb, like blob ride and all this sort of stuff so I could cobble together enough money for people coming in. I even compromised my morals and built a circus because,
I didn't.
I mean,
I didn't.
no,
None of my parks
I
had a
did it.
circus. Nope. Go to
Yeah,
hell.
no.
Go to hell, circuses.
But I finally did it. I could build a roller coaster, and I picked one, and it had an elevated entrance to it, and I did literally spent probably about half an hour screwing around with trying to build an elevated walkway and trying to, and oh my God. And then all of a sudden I just got frustrated and said, nope, and just deleted the thing. And then I did not have enough money to build because of the money, thousands of dollars I lost on this venture. I didn't have enough money to build a roller coaster. So I went back to building things that I knew worked, And so again, like to say, like all you have to do is just say all of the roller coasters are just, if they're prefab, then they're prefabbed. And so like it's already got the built-in queue line, and there's nothing raised, lowering, just here's where you go in.
So some of the rides actually do that because they're real world rides, or they were like created by like real engineers from Six Flags or whatever. And so they actually have the theming, and they have all kinds of crap around them, and buildings and trees and stuff, and the queue line. I had the opposite problem because knowing how, in my super robotic mechanist clockwork way I wanted to lay out the park, because you can turn off the theming. So for the rides that have theming, you could say, no, I don't want the theming. I just want the ride. And I would forget to do that. And I would slam the ride down, and I would see their dumbass version of the queue. And I would be like, that you can't fit hundreds and hundreds of people angrily in that queue. What is wrong with you? So now I have to delete the ride, and this is one of the worst decisions that they made in this game. If you put down a ride that is pre-themed and you delete the ride, it doesn't delete any of the theming.
Ooh.
So my first couple parks, before I reminded myself, okay, you have to turn off theming before you build a ride, are just littered with the shells of like futuristic societies and medieval castles and farmland, because I would build these rides and then need to move them or something, and I just would not take the time to go delete all of the theming. So some of the theming is gone, but not all of it. Just my first couple of parks just looked exceptionally derelict. Even though the guests were happy, I as the player was like, this looks like crap.
And so we kind of dance around the other thing that is in service to this, right? Which is that there's no gating mechanics, right? The tutorial exists, and we can get into that a little bit. But basically, there's no like, okay. So again, to compare to Civilization 6, right? Is that when you start playing, we'll have to play that as a nostalgia game at some point. When you start playing it, you build a new town. There's like two things that you can build, and then as you learn new technologies and new civics and kind of start to get your feet wet, you can build new things. And then by the time you get to the end map, there's like 50 different things that you can have the town working on, right? Or city at that point, right? If you're doing it right. This game starts off, you can build it all, right? So a part of me is like, okay, so why do I have the menu for the $50,000 roller coaster when I can't possibly build it, right? Why are you giving me all of these options now? And to be fair, there are. It's like, oh, and some of the scenarios are like, hey, now you can build a hot dog stand, and hey, now you can build this other thing, and it's like, yeah, but you still gave me the functionality of building foodstuffs immediately, building like all of these things, and terraforming, and building the lines and all this other stuff. So for someone who knows how to play the game, that's great, right? Because you don't have to deal with like slowly spinning up. You can suddenly bend the world to your whims immediately, right? Or was it Cave Johnson says, like, each of your tests is based off of how you have bent the world to your whims or something like that. Anyways, I say all that to say, though, for somebody like me, it is completely overwhelming,
Well, and I'll make you feel a little better by saying I played the mess out of this game, and when I first opened the first park, I went, "What do I do?" Like it was like a diesel engine, man. Like it took a minute for that to start back up. I would open a box and some window and be like, "Oh yeah." And then I would click on something in that window and be like, oh, yeah, you can see all of this about all of these things, and all of this information is available to you. And okay, so I can do this over here and I can build this ride. And this is a quick, easy way to start getting people into the park. And then, okay. But there was like that took place over like probably a couple of hours, right? Of just getting my mind back into the space. And then over my entire remaining playthrough, there were still things that I was like, oh, right, there's this whole menu that just does this one thing in like a slightly more efficient way than going and doing it, individually. So even up through the last scenario I did, I was still rediscovering a game mechanic. So to have played this game as much as I did and sat down in front of it and just felt like I was at a friggin' space shuttle, right? Where there's just all these buttons and it's like, I just want to know which one opens the glove box because my hands are cold, but I'm afraid I will explode the world if I touch the wrong thing.
Well, and part of it, and this is probably a little bit my own hangups, but I can imagine that there would be some people that would empathize, is that, you open up a screen, you press a button and it opens up a screen with like 4 different tabs. And each of those tabs has like 15 different numbers on it, right? I'm like, well, the game wouldn't give me access to this if this wasn't important information for me to have. So I should like learn about this because the game's happening right now. Like the park's open, And so then I'd open up another tab and there's another 15 things of numbers. I felt like somebody who was, running a business and people kept handing me more and more TPS reports. And I'm like, I don't know what any of this means, but I was hired to do a job. And it felt like Leela the bureaucrat,
Mm-hmm.
Like when, where she's just like, there's no more places to put letters, when Hermes comes back, right? Like, and so because of that, what I said is that the game has a cycle, right? Which is that you start, the theoretical cycle is you start off with a small park with a very small amount of money, and you build rides which bring in more money, build bigger rides, bring in more money, build in bigger rides, bring in more money, right? That's the theoretical cycle. Cycle I experienced was start to have fun, get frustrated, start to have fun, get frustrated, right? Because I would finally start to feel like, oh yeah, like, all right, I got some money coming in, got some people. Ooh, I hired this person, that's fun. Somebody vomited. How do I clean that up? Like I can't clean it up. It's like, oh well, you have to go get a maintenance worker to clean that up. Oh, okay. So then I finally, all right, now I know how to hire people. Okay, I'm going to build a roller coaster. Oh, well, no, I can't build this roller coaster here because of these arcane things that I didn't know. All right, So again, like that was the cycle I was having, which was right when I would, it was the, yeah, but you didn't, in like work, right? Where you're like, hey, I got that report done for you. You're like, well, did you consider thing A? It's like, you never told me to. And it's like, well, go back and redo it. And you're like, okay. Hey, I got the report done. Well, you didn't think about thing B, did you? Why didn't? Oh my God, why? So that ended up being the game cycle for me.
Yeah. And so here's a thing that happened to me. Did you play with the loan mechanic at all?
No.
Okay. You can borrow money. You can borrow a lot of money. And the penalty for that is that there is no penalty for that. And if you're an adult,
like interest or anything like that,
there's interest, I guess. But here's the thing: there's 5% interest. I think the amount of money you can borrow from the bank is either based on the scenario or it's based on the success of your company. So the smallest loan amount I ever saw was $20,000. So you start with 10. So borrowing $20,000 more is a lot of buying power. And I actually, when I first took the loan out, I was like, oh, like, is this going to come back and bite me later? And then someone in Twitch chat said something that I thought was very useful and succinct. So I actually wrote it down here. More loan equals more coaster. And, and the thing is, that was my lived experience of the game from that moment on. I would start a scenario, immediately take out whatever the maximum amount of money they would give me is, build a fantastical park, hire a huge staff, and then just pay back the loan if I felt like it. Because who the hell cares? None of the scenarios that I played required me to have paid back my loan. There are a bunch of expert scenarios I didn't get to, so maybe some of them do. This game has like 50 scenarios, and I did like 7. Why would you not just play that way? And that was when it occurred to me, that is how a kid would play. A kid would say, I don't care about the business, right? And I mean like a kid, like talking like 14 and under, right? A kid would say, I just want to build a cool theme park. And so that kid sits down, eventually somehow through trial and error learns how the loan mechanic works, takes out all of the money, and then just builds the park they want to build. And because you have to really aggressively script the financials to not have a at least like break even park, you gotta really try hard to not at least have break even park, because things have default prices, right? So without even digging into your friggin' profit loss summary, which that information is available to you like on a ride by ride basis, you can pretty much just build what you want and be successful. And that was an important realization, because I was like, oh, this is not a modern sim game where people are like, no, I want the tax collector to come around and like threaten to break my knees if I don't get this straight with the man upstairs, right? Like I want that real, like, break even, break neck pace. How do I get to the go-go 80s cocaine fueled Wall Street and not end up in the go-go 90s cocaine fueled post Wall Street, right? Like, there's a dream that some people have because they're insane of digitizing and living out that experience. But that is not what this game is trying to do at all. This game is trying to have the mechanics of SimCity, right? Where you got to make sure there's power to everything. You got to make sure there's plumbing to everything. You can build a bathroom in the middle of the ocean in this game, and it will have power and plumbing. And if there is a walkway to get there, people will go to it, even though it's out in the middle of the ocean. No one will ever complain that it's a far walk. No one will ever say, "Oh, well, what's the radius that this bathroom covers?" No, just is there a bathroom at all? Because that is how children think. And this is not a negative thing, but I am not a children. So I had to very much force myself back into that mindset, because to bring this all the way back around to your point, the game doesn't tell you any of this. There's no solid tutorial. There's zero gating mechanics. So like, if you know basically how the mechanics work and you're in the right mindset, this game is super easy. If you're trying to play this with the sophistication of a modern sim game, this would seem unbelievably complicated, super hard.
When there's a great quote, actually, one of the things that Civilization 6 does is whenever you discover a new technology or a new civic, it gives you like a quote kind of around that thing, which is great because it has made me seem way more educated than I actually am. Because like I'll say like, oh, I believe it was Winston Churchill that said that no matter how elegant the strategy, one should occasionally check the results. And people are like, oh my God, this guy must have like studied the. And like, no, I just I played Civilization. But
how did you get a science degree and a liberal arts degree?
Well, it's like Kerflurgan once said, "Flarp farp, that's liberty do."
That's Latin.
But there's a great quote, and I forget who it's attributed to, but as when you owe the bank $100, that's your problem. When you owe the bank $100 million, that's the bank's problem. And
I've heard that before.
And I love that quote. And but this, I mean, it's very much of that, where it's like, I'm going to take out, $100 million loan. It's like, when you going to pay that back? When I fucking feel like it, because there is nothing you can do about it. We
played SimCity. We played Masters of Orion. Have we done any other Civilization style-y sim games?
No, we've still got Civilization 2 that we got to play.
Another number 2 game. But my point is, in those games, money matters. And sometimes you struggle to make money, and sometimes you think you're doing okay, and then a thing goes wrong, and now the money that was super reliable is now in question. Once I realized you could just borrow money at the start of every scenario and then just build the park of your dreams, and customers would just get on board as long as you met like the bare minimum to keep the park successful, money would never be a problem again. I was like, oh, this is right, because this is not that. This is not right. This is not managing bank paperwork simulator. This is RollerCoaster Tycoon. And RollerCoaster Tycoon has RollerCoaster Tycoon in the name, not bank paperwork simulator in the name.
Yes, absolutely. I just have a couple of other throwaway notes. One is The tutorial sucks. It just does. It costs money to both place and remove some objects, which I thought was interesting. Because I definitely did not hemorrhage an unconscionable amount of money, but a non-zero sum of money screwing up that walkway situation.
Yeah.
So rides should just start open. They shouldn't start closed, because otherwise you end up with a bunch of closed rides and your wife has to tell you repeatedly to keep the rides open. Hypothetically. And
I mean, just for instance,
for a friend. And so the one final thing I wanted to mention was just an interesting story that I had, which was the scenarios I was playing were predominantly you pay to get into the park, right? And so I was like, oh man, I was playing. I was like, I don't know if I have enough to really raise the price, and because it's based off how many people you have in park. So I kept building, and all of a sudden I was like, I don't know. I'm starting to. I need to raise some capital, right? So I doubled the amount of money to like get into the park, right? And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? Because I was sure, and I'm still confident, that the price to get in directly relates to how many people will come in, right? But I think that also too, there's a function of how many people can be in the park, right? So like, yeah. So basically, it's whichever one of those two is the limiting factor. And I found that out the funny way, because I was like, all right, I'm gonna I think I tripled the price to get in, or something I thought that was crazy. And people were still coming in, and I raised some money, built some roller coasters. And then I was like, okay, but the month before before the game ends, I'm going to drop that price, like just bottom that crap out, because I'm not going to buy anything else, right? So I can just throw people into the park. And it turns out that I was not charging enough for people to get into my park, because I bottomed out the price, and then they were like 10% more people showed up. I was like, oh, so already we were at maximum capacity, and I just didn't know it. And so I say all that to say a maximum capacity number would have been nice, because I feel like that is, I totally get, that not having clandestine knowledge of like every single thing that people want and what the market's going to do if you raise the price to get into the park. Like you wouldn't have that information. You would know how many people can reasonably be in your park at a time,
Yeah. And there are, I think, at least a few of those kind of shadow mechanics where, like in a normal video game, you don't really think about that. But in a simulation game, you have data in your face constantly, and you are often digging for more. So when you come up against an unknown and unknowable piece of information in a simulation game, that hits awkwardly, right? Because you're just like, well, how many people can the park hold? I don't know. And I don't know any way to find out, right? It's not even like, well, the game doesn't show you, but if you multiply this by this and you divide by that, then add a zero, and that's how many people can fit in the park. But to the best of my knowledge, there's nothing like that. And if there is, it's so opaque that it's like you would tell your friend on the playground they're lying, that kind of thing, Right. So yeah. I think I agree with you. There are pieces of data that it's like, how does this game have so much data and not these? And yet I am still asking for more. On the flip side of that, holy crap, dude! Like everything you could want to know, sometimes it feels like is there, because you can see how much you're charging for a ride, how much it makes per hour, how often it breaks down, when it was fixed. You can see the popularity and satisfaction of individual rides. You can see the status of individual employees, and there's actually a menu in the menu where you can tell individual employees to only do certain tasks. So like I had this one park where I wasn't having any of my handymen mow the grass, and then I realized you could tell them to do that, and I was like, oh my god, I was kidding when I said someone needed to mow the grass, but you can actually make them mow the grass. So since I was almost done with that scenario, I just made all of my handymen stop what they were doing and mow the grass, and it looked completely ridiculous. You can go and see the individual and aggregate thoughts of every single person in the park. So
this was very forward thinking, because basically it's Twitter,
right?
Like you can see the Twitter feed about your park. And I'm sure like at the time they were like, oh, look at this. We're going to put this gamey mechanic in there because, we kind of need to let the player know what the overall feel of the park is, so we're just going to have this like digital layout of people sharing their opinions on, like on this. It's a game, whatever people. And it's like, no, did you think of Twitter like 20 years before Twitter?
5, but still.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and this, I mean, my industry is product management. Like, a huge part of my job is trying to get the truth out of my customers so that I know like what's working, what's not working. Cause you can't just ask people because they lie to you, right? They lie to you because they want you to like them. They want you to be happy with them, whatever, right? Like, you can't just ask people direct questions. So there's all these tactics and ways to get around stupid human psychology, but this is a direct telepathic feed into the mind of every single person. How much money are they carrying? Do they need to go to the bathroom? Are they hungry? Like, you compared it to The Sims. It's that for every single person in the park, which can be thousands and thousands of people.
Sorry, I just was saying for your industry is it's like, it's like ego wrap there, but everything they say is cryptic. Nothing's helpful, and some of them lie to you.
Yes,
like that's
he is talking about product management.
That is amazing. But yeah, no, so I mean, like to your point, right? There is a million bajillion T data points, right? And so again, there is an incredible depth to this game. The question is just, how well does the game convey that information, and how much time are you willing to spend ingesting that information to play the game, which I think would be a great transition to whether or not it held up. But I don't know if you got more stuff.
I just have 2 little throwaway things that I just thought were interesting. One is awards can be issued to your park, and they can be negative, which I just thought was cute. Like, I got an award for the most.
I never got a Razzie. I ran good parks, but
yeah, I got one award somehow in like all the scenarios I did, and it was most confusing layout. and to be fair, that was in the park where you don't actually have to build a park. You just slap down rides and then the scenario ends. So I didn't build a park. I just slapped down rides. And anyway, I just thought that was funny, like a cute little detail. The one other thing is, and you don't have an experience for this. If you happen to know for Megan, you could share. I didn't spend any time building death traps. I had a lot of memories of building death traps because eventually, in SimCity, you cause an earthquake or you make Bowser come or whatever. And that's fun. But not only did I not do that, I didn't even care. Like I thought about it once. I was like, oh, I should build a roller coaster that'll crash just to see that animation. And then I didn't do it. And I was like, oh, it's because I'm old now. Like, that's fine. But like, the compulsion to be a trickster god just completely left me.
It's interesting because I think that you might get there if you spent that much time with the game, as I think that we have a 2-week play cycle. So I think that if you were willing to spend months on it, then eventually you'd be like, oh yeah, now let me explore this crevice that I didn't get to. But
now let me explore the darker part of my soul.
Yeah, like when I was in my 20s and I was playing Borderlands 2, there was like a way to do like a ROM hack of like a character or something like that to where you could give them like legendary items or something like that. And I actually did it because I was like, oh, I want these legendary items. I don't want to spend forever farming them. And I would never do anything like that now because I don't have time for it, but again, at the time I was like, oh no, this would be fun. So I think that that's probably less of a function of age and more of a function of time, especially because if you got to the point with the game where you had explored all the other mechanics to the point where now you were going to explore that, you would probably just put it down and play a different game at that point,
So did this game hold up? I really coming into this wanted to give it a no nostalgia goggles because of the OpenRCT2 community, because a lot of the quality of life stuff we mentioned, that mod, which is free, by the way, this game costs like $5, and this incredible mod, which fixes all sorts of quality of life stuff, all sorts of modern computer compatibility stuff, completely free. But could I recommend this game to someone who has never played it without giving them a bunch of, by the way, here's how you do things, or here's like the RollerCoaster Tycoon wiki that will answer all of your questions that you are definitely going to have, right? Because no, I couldn't, right? Because the OpenRCT2 mod, which is super amazing, it does things like makes the rides auto default to open. It auto places workers when you hire them so that you don't have to hand place each person in the park. But you wouldn't know to turn those features on if you didn't know how the game functioned, right? So like those are all amazing quality of life improvements, but it's like the secret menu in a fast food restaurant. If you don't know you can order those things, then they might as well not sell them, right? It's the back room in a Blockbuster. Like, oh, what's behind the curtain? And it's like, well, if you knew what was back there, then you would be back there seeing what the selection was. But the fact that you're asking means you are not allowed back there. So it's like, I want to, because I had a great time playing this game. I want to give this no nostalgia goggles required, but I'm going to put 2 asterisks on this. It's a begrudging nostalgia monocle, and do yourself the kindness of playing this with this free mod. It's called OpenRCT2. I will make sure it is linked in the show notes. They're a very nice community. This is free. You should give them money if you like this game, because if you played this when you were a kid like I did, and you were really frustrated by the rough edges that we've been describing for 90 minutes, this sands a lot of them off. Not all of them, but a lot of them get sanded off. And that, I didn't play with any of those because I was going for the authentic experience, but I'm going to probably spend some more time with this game with all that cool stuff turned on. So nostalgia monocle, but for the love of God, do yourself the kindness, get the quality of life stuff.
And yeah, and fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your seat, I agree with you. I think that you kind of have to go with nostalgia monocle just because the premise of it is, does it hold up to today's standards? And there are just a lot of things that this game does that would not be acceptable by today's standards. Like, is the game fun? Yes. I mean, like, this is definitely, I would consider it to be like the chaotic good of video games, right? Where it's like, it does a whole bunch of stuff that are considered to be like sins of the industry now, right? But it's fun. It's a fun game. Like, I enjoyed playing it, even though I said my cycle was between frustration and having fun, right? I still was having fun, and I could see myself losing hours to this game and enjoying the mastery of all of the mechanics. But again, when comparing it to modern 4X games and things like that, it does so many things to where you're like, yeah, this is what used to be normal, and now it's not anymore. Like it has it's you know what it is? It's the 4X equivalent of NES hard. Is it just does a bunch of stuff where you're just kind of like, yeah, that's the way that NES games played. And you're either on board or you aren't. So if they do have a mod that gets rid of all of that, then that's great, because I think that if they did that right, then they should like monetize it as a business, as some type of a tycoon of some sort. No, that's too on the nose.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player 2 there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less